Hello everyone, my name is Keiko Honda. My background is behavioral science in public health. This presentation will explain Back's organizational perspective and the idea behind our intergenerational arts-based community work. Specifically, we are looking for the general principles that seems to govern the things we observed, even if we can't yet prove they apply. I clearly recall from my previous public health research that sharing my personal story was not something I needed to do. Instead, I needed to align myself with the dominant culture in evidence-based scientific explanations. However, since I started my nonprofit organization that builds cross-cultural resilience in communities through art, I've learned a few things. First, community art requires changing our interpersonal relationships from hierarchical to horizontal. Second, I find it useful to share my own personal stories as a foundation of my work. We cannot simply develop resilient communities by only looking outside. The outside and inside are vital facets of our lived experience. So we start with ourselves. But what does this mean? Do we really need to conduct formal scientific research in order to apply arts to promote well-being and build communities? The problem with that is that we can't observe or measure everything. No matter how good our measuring tools and observations are, there is a limit to how much we can measure. So before we start, we should ask what we are capable of measuring and whether we really need to measure it. As the biostatistician likely to say, sometimes we don't need statistics. These are just a few of the issues which surfaced through our community stories and narratives. Within my team, there is a great deal of intuitive conceptual dialogue around these questions, resulting in numerous preliminary conceptual models of how individuals' participation in the arts, whether solo or in groups, relates to the generation of human capital and the improvement of human health and well-being. Before I get into our current conceptual model, I would like to quickly touch on how we define health and well-being. The World Health Organization defines health as a resource for everyday life, not the objective of living. So health is at its core about having the capacity to cope and fulfill our potential with a certain degree of independence and opportunity to participate socially. So health is a dynamic process that depends on the context and the community's need. And the meaning of well-being will differ from one person to the next. More and more, there is an emerging body of research indicating that active arts engagement can enhance older adults' health and well-being. But the scientific evidence still lags behind our lived knowledge. But now and before the pandemic, art has consistently been used to improve the health and well-being of people around the world. Interestingly, this multidimensional aspect of health has been well ingrained in many diverse cultures. For example, various indigenous conceptualizations of health emphasize culture, spirituality, interdependence, and interconnections between individuals and their wider environment, just as in the natural world. In Japanese culture, the concept of well-being is often associated with having ikigai, a motive for living. This comes from the particular intersection of passion, talent, and potential to benefit others, which is captured by the well-known ikigai diagram shown in the slide. The concept of ikigai is said to have evolved from basic health and wellness principles of traditional Japanese medicine, which holds the physical well-being is affected by one's mental, emotional health and sense of purpose in life. Just as the center of the flower produces pollen and attract pollinators, through ikigai, people quote-unquote pollinate cultural values, skills, mentorship, wisdom, and their highest potential with the help of a variety of vectors and agents. Therefore, communities are central to human flourishing, and one's community holds important value both as a means to promote individual health and as an inherent collective goods. To demonstrate the Japanese indigenous way of life, here is 19th century woodblock print by a Japanese artist. The genre is ukiyo-e, a kind of Japanese art which was often used as a way of provoking and challenging comfortable ideas and ways of thinking in 18th and 19th century Japan. Like this one, ukiyo-e images were often accompanied by a title and a statement. Like today's Instagram, they reflected the trends of the time. Can you guess what the man in this picture is saying using the visual clues? He is saying, many people come together to make a truly fine person. Without receiving something from others, one cannot become virtuous. This embodied interdependence is one of the reasons why Japanese have the longest average life expectancy in the world. As we touched on earlier, health is a dynamic process, and what constitutes well-being differs from one person to the next, depending on the context and their needs. So let's look at the human needs. Are you all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? He amended his original model, placing self-transcendence as the stage beyond self-actualization. Recognizing self-transcendence has important consequences for our discourse because it includes more holistic, more multicultural understanding of human flourishing and intergenerational sustainabilities. This is an informal visual diagram of what we are currently working on through animation to communicate some tentative new ideas. Here, I posit the Maslow's hierarchy may be applied as easily to a collective as it is to an individual. My diagram's three-dimensional space, the three parameters represented along the XYZ axis are human needs, earth engagement, and co-creation strategies, respectively. The conchospiral shape derived from spiral shapes of certain seashells act as a nature-inspired metaphor. Through this rough diagram, I'm trying to convey the message that A. Nature and human society are not separate. B. We need to focus on the value of arts engagement in group flourishing. And C. Co-creation is a powerful strategy. The question remains, why do we refrain from making art? I'm curious to know what non-art practitioners can gain from understanding more about the relationship between arts engagement, health, and creative society. What do we have to lose? This is our process. For us, ongoing community dialogue and reflection comprise the heart and soul of our project. We also pay attention to relevant literature review. As you see, our organizational needs and milestones try to emulate Maslow's growth model. Our ultimate goal, transcendence, is about making space, tools, motivation, and community available to experience art as an individual and collective creators and agent of change. Our most recent example is a series called Memorigami, hybrid digital paper methods of storytelling that integrates the art of holding paper with stories contributed from the lives of older adults. 6 older women, myself included, participated in producing autobiographical artwork through representational tasks. We each started by developing a personal story, representing that story in a physical medium, such as a small folding book enriched with origami inserts. Then, focusing on how the medium enabled our representation of the story. We subsequently worked in pairs with youth to produce second-level digital representations based on the original folded paper that reflected the relationship between story and tools. We have launched exhibitions to showcase the digital representations and memorigami books through our partnership with the Roundhouse. We also use social media to reach a wider audience. The process of reflection is as deeply variable as the artistic production itself. We interview each woman. Their answers were illuminating. Participants found that memorigami engaged their intellectual, affective, sensory, and kinesthetic faculties. It also spurred the building of artistic social networks for them, which can be very useful remedy for social isolation. Moreover, it helped improve their communication skills that will be increasingly important in the coming years. This is my last slide. Thank you so much for listening.